The galaxy had seen many strange things. Dying suns, collapsing stars, entire empires rising and falling within centuries. But nothing like this. Across the edge of the Orion sector, deep scanners began to pick up something enormous moving through the dark. At first, the signal looked like a ghost, no engine signature, no heat, nothing alive. It was just there, drifting through space, silent and cold. When the image came through, every station went quiet. It was a ship, black as the void, smooth like a blade, longer than any known vessel. It did not send a signal. It did not respond to hails. It simply moved, slowly, with purpose, like something ancient that had just awakened after a long sleep. In the observation chambers of the Galactic Council, hundreds of eyes watched the same footage. The ship crossed the red glow of a dying sun, and for a moment the light reflected along its hull. The words that appeared made every translator freeze. They were written in an old forgotten script, English. The code was recognized instantly. It belonged to humanity. No one in the chamber spoke. The humans had disappeared 500 years ago, during what was called the Age of Collapse. Back then, the galaxy had been in chaos. Humans were outnumbered, betrayed by allies, crushed in wars they could not win. And yet, even when they were defeated, they left behind stories. Stories of ships that could vanish from radar, soldiers who never surrendered, and a final fleet that went into the stars and never came back. Now, one of those ships had returned. The ship slowed near the twin stars of the Delta Rim and held position. Its size was almost unreal. It could have carried entire cities inside. Scanners tried to map its structure, but the readings failed. The hull seemed to bend space around it, swallowing every signal sent its way. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council did not know what to do. Admiral Korin of the Dravik Empire stared at the display. "It cannot be human," he said. "Humans are extinct." The Vori ambassador, whose species once fought beside humans, whispered, "Then tell me why my sensors read a human life code." Far below the council chambers, on thousands of planets, news of the mysterious ship spread like wildfire. Civilian broadcasts replayed the silent footage of the vessel crossing the light of two suns. Some said it was a ghost. Others believed it was an omen of war. Children on the mining colonies looked up at the night sky, searching for a ship that might already be watching them. On the barren moon of Kellen, an old monk named Taro knelt before a flickering screen. He had spent his life studying ancient human texts, forgotten languages, lost philosophies. When he saw the ship, he recognized the name burned faintly across its hull, Eidolon. He closed his eyes. They have returned. The Eidolon had been the last of the human fleet. According to history, it carried the remnants of humanity's best minds, their last leaders, and their most advanced weapons. It was said to have vanished during the final siege, taking with it the hope of an entire species. Now it hovered in the open, surrounded by the curious and the fearful. A week passed. The ship did nothing. It simply stayed still, watching. Fleets from the strongest empires positioned themselves at a distance, weapons armed but silent. The Galactic Council tried every possible frequency, every ancient code, even human distress calls from the archives. There was no answer. On the 8th day, something changed. The Eidolon released a single pulse of light, soft, white, almost like a heartbeat. Every communication relay across the sector caught the signal. It was not an attack. It was something else. The pulse carried a message. When translated, it read only one line: "We remember." Those two words hit harder than any weapon. Across the galaxy, entire species felt a chill run through them. They remembered, too, the wars, the betrayals, the burning of Earth. The humans had once been the galaxy's innovators, builders, dreamers. But they were also fighters, fierce beyond reason. When they were cornered, they fought until their enemies begged for mercy. Now, after centuries of silence, they had come back. And they remembered. In the Dravik capital, panic broke out. Their generals had once led the campaign that destroyed the human homeworld. The same men who had called humanity too emotional to survive now hid behind locked chambers, afraid of what would come next. But the ship did not move closer. It did not fire a weapon. It simply stayed there, between two suns, waiting. Inside its hull, hidden from all scanners, lights glowed softly in long-forgotten corridors. Dust settled on consoles that had not been touched for centuries. Then a voice echoed through the command bridge, calm, human, and alive. Coordinates confirmed, said the voice. Observation complete, a second voice answered, deeper, older. They have grown, but not learned. Do we engage? The first asked. No, the commander replied. Not yet. Let them remember who we were before they see who we have become. The lights dimmed. Engines hummed faintly, bending gravity around the ship's massive frame. For a brief moment, the Eidolon shimmered like a reflection on water, and then it vanished. Across the galaxy, sensors went dark. The ship was gone. In its place, only the faint pulse remained, echoing across deep space, steady, patient, and alive. Every empire, every leader, every watcher felt it in their bones. Humanity had not returned to fight. They had returned to watch. The galaxy stared into the dark and waited. For the first time in 1,000 years, the stars themselves felt alive again. The signal from the vanished warship did not fade. It stayed in the air like a whisper across time, steady, low, unending. Every empire in the galaxy heard it, and none could explain it. It was not a threat, not a warning. It was something far more terrifying, a reminder. In the halls of the Galactic Council, panic had turned to silence. Alien leaders filled the great chamber, their voices low and uncertain. Holograms of the Eidolon floated above the central platform, its massive form rotating slowly under the dim lights. Every few seconds, its hull shimmered with that same soft pulse, as if it were breathing. High Chancellor Varax of the Andraxian Dominion slammed his clawed hand against the table. We cannot just sit here. That ship is human, and humans bring war. They always did. The Vohri diplomat, a calm, silver-skinned being, turned toward him. And what will you do, Chancellor? Fire at it? You know what happened to the last fleet that tried. Across the chamber, murmurs rose. Some delegates remembered the old records, the last war against Earth. The humans had fought with machines that learned faster than any command center, weapons that struck before they were even seen. When humanity was finally cornered, they had destroyed their own world rather than surrender. Even the stars over Earth still burned strangely, as if touched by something unnatural. Now one of their ships had returned. In a distant corner of the chamber, the oldest delegate sat quietly, a frail being named Theros from the Cathari order. His race was ancient, older than most star systems, and he had been alive during the fall of humanity. When he spoke, his voice was soft but carried through the hall like a memory. They do not come for war, Theros said. They come to see what we became without them. The room fell silent. Then why hide? Growled the Dravic admiral. Why not show themselves? Theros looked up, his eyes clouded with age. Because they do not trust us, and perhaps they should not. Outside the council chamber, chaos brewed across the galaxy. Every empire moved fleets toward the sector where the Eidolon had appeared. Entire systems prepared defenses while civilian ships fled in every direction. Fear spread faster than light. In the mining colonies, old stories resurfaced, stories of human soldiers who walked through fire, of ships that vanished mid-battle, of voices in the dark saying, "We endure." On the academic world of Valor Prime, a group of scientists analyzed the pulse that the Eidolon had sent. It carried something strange within it, patterns, rhythms, almost like a message hidden in the heartbeat. When decoded, it revealed fragments of music, human music, notes from an ancient Earth song that none had heard for centuries. The lead scientist, a young Vohri named Ilan, stared at the waveform with wide eyes. They are not sending a message, she whispered. They are remembering. She stood before her students and played the full recording. Across the room, a haunting melody filled the air, slow, solemn, full of sorrow. The kind of sound that carried the weight of a species that had lost everything but refused to vanish. Meanwhile, on the cold moon of Kellen, the old monk Taro kept his vigil. Every night he looked up at the stars, searching for the glow of the Eidolon. He could feel it out there, watching. He opened his ancient human texts and whispered, "They were the builders, the dreamers, the ones who lit the first torch in the dark, and we burned them for it." Far away, in a hidden command station orbiting a black dwarf, an emergency meeting took place. The rulers of the strongest empires gathered in secret, their faces lit by cold screens. They cannot be allowed to return. One said, "If humans come back, the balance will shatter. We have built this galaxy on their absence." A Dravic general leaned forward. "Then we strike before they do. We will find the ship and erase it." But no one truly believed that was possible. Every empire that had tried to fight humanity had fallen. Even now, their fleets hesitated. Still, orders were given. Battlecruisers began to move quietly toward the outer rim, where the Eidolon had last been seen. They traveled in formation, silent and alert, scanning every distortion in space. Then something unexpected happened. One of the smaller fleets, the Kelnari patrol, detected a faint shadow drifting behind them. It was huge, slow, and matching their course. The commander, nervous but curious, turned his scanners toward it. At first, there was nothing. Then, for a fraction of a second, something reflected their own light back at them. A shape, a massive silhouette, moving like a predator behind prey. "Contact," the commander shouted. "Unknown object following us!" Before anyone could react, a message appeared on every ship in the fleet. Simple white text, no signature, no origin. "You are being observed." Every system froze. The Kelnari fleet turned around, but there was nothing. The shadow was gone. In the council chamber, reports of this event arrived within hours. Panic broke out again. The Andraxian Dominion called it psychological warfare. The Vori called it a warning. Only Theros, the old Cathari, smiled sadly. "They do not need to attack," he said. "They only need to remind us that they still exist." And then across every channel, every station, and every world, something else appeared. A single human voice. Calm, deep, and ancient. It spoke only once. "We left because you demanded peace. We return because you have forgotten its price." After that, silence. No one dared to speak. No one dared to move fleets. From that moment, the galaxy understood something far greater than fear: respect. Humanity had not come back to conquer. They had come back to watch. And every empire, no matter how mighty, could feel their gaze like a weight pressing through the stars. The Eidolon was nowhere to be found, but its presence was everywhere, and somewhere hidden beyond the reach of any scanner. Its engine stirred again, quiet, patient, and waiting for the right time to reveal the truth. For 13 days, the galaxy waited. The pulse of the vanished human warship continued to echo like a heartbeat across subspace. Every relay, every listening post, every corner of known civilization felt its rhythm. It was slow, patient, unending, like the breathing of something alive. Entire planets stopped to listen. Traders in orbit paused their journeys. Even pirate fleets known for defying all authority turned their radios toward the void, wondering what would come next. No one wanted to admit it, but everyone could feel the same thing. The galaxy was no longer theirs. Something older, stronger, and far more patient had returned. Then, without warning, the pulse stopped. At that very moment, a flash appeared above the twin suns of the Delta Rim. The light was blinding, brighter than a star's birth, and for a heartbeat, the dark side of a dozen nearby planets lit up like day. When the glare faded, the Eidolon was there again. It hung motionless in the light of the twin suns, silent but awake. This time its surface shifted, revealing moving panels that glowed with deep amber veins. Across the galaxy, observers scrambled to record every second of it. Scanners picked up impossible readings, temperatures colder than space itself, and energy spikes that broke the known scale of measurement. Then came the voice. It began as a faint vibration across every ship and station. The sound deepened, resonating through metal hulls, through bones, through the hearts of all who listened. It was human, male, steady and powerful, but it carried no emotion. "We are not here for war, but we remember." The words repeated once, then vanished. No signature, no frequency, just silence afterward, thick, heavy, endless. For a few moments, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. Fleets started sending hails again. Governments demanded translation, and prophets across dozens of worlds began to preach that the gods of old had returned in human form. But on one quiet planet, a neutral world called Serenus, someone did not panic. A scientist named Lura, once part of the old Earth Archive project, played the signal again and again. She noticed something strange. The voice carried tiny gaps, micro-pauses arranged in a pattern. To most, it was random noise, but to her trained ear, it was language. Hidden inside those silences was a second message. When decoded, it said, "Do not fear. We are the witnesses of what you became." Lura felt her throat tighten. "Witnesses," she whispered. "They're watching us." Across the galaxy, debates exploded. What did the humans mean? Why return after centuries? Were they seeking peace, or were they the beginning of something greater? something that would test the entire galaxy. On the capital world of the Andraxian Dominion, the answer came violently. The Dominion, fearing humiliation, decided to show power. Their Supreme Admiral, arrogant and furious, declared the humans to be a bluff, just ghosts wrapped in old myths. He ordered an attack. A fleet of 100 Andraxian warships was sent to the Delta Rim to confront the Eidolon. Their ships were armed with anti-matter torpedoes, gravity imploders, and neural warheads. The operation was broadcast across the galaxy as a show of strength. For hours, the fleet moved in formation toward the human warship, weapons armed, every gun locked on its silent form. The Eidolon did not move. "Target acquired," said the Andraxian commander. "They are nothing but relics." He raised his clawed hand to give the order, but before he could, all their systems went dark. Engines died. Lights flickered. Weapons went offline. The entire Andraxian fleet froze in space like statues. Inside their ships, alarms screamed, but there was no power to stop them. And then, through the dead silence of their comms, came a calm human voice. "We warned you once." On every Andraxian screen, a hologram appeared. An old man, human, dressed in a dark, simple uniform. His eyes were gray, his voice almost gentle. "We do not seek war," he said. "But if you threaten the peace we once built, you will see the power that sleeps in silence." The hologram flickered once. "We remember the wars you forced upon us. We remember the fire you rained on our homeworld. We remember the promises broken in the name of unity. We have returned not to conquer, but to remind." Then he raised his hand. A sphere of light appeared behind him, a map of the galaxy. Tiny red points began to light up across thousands of systems. Every red point was an active human vessel. The Andraxian commander's mouth fell open. That cannot be possible. There were only myths. The old man's eyes turned toward him through the screen. "We became myths so you would forget your guilt. But myths never die, they wait." The hologram vanished. A heartbeat later, every Andraxian ship powered back on. Their systems restored, their weapons hot. But the human ship had disappeared again. The fleet was alone in the stars. The transmission reached the Galactic Council minutes later. Panic turned to disbelief. The Cathari historians confirmed that the coordinates shown by the human hologram matched systems once colonized by early humanity. Worlds thought lost, barren, or lifeless. But now, they glowed red with power. Lura's voice echoed through the council's chamber as she replayed the message. "We are the witnesses of what you became." She turned to the gathered leaders and said quietly, "They are not coming to destroy us. They are coming to judge us." That night, as fear spread across empires, small lights began to appear in the skies of many worlds, moving stars that watched from orbit, too fast to track, too far to reach. People called them eyes of humanity. On mining colonies, workers stood outside their domes to watch them move. On military planets, soldiers lowered their weapons, whispering the old word that had been forgotten for centuries, Earthlings. And somewhere, aboard the Eidolon, the old commander stood before a vast holographic map of the galaxy, his eyes calm. "Phase 1 complete," said his second officer. The commander nodded slowly. "Now they know we still exist. Soon they will remember what we were." He looked at the stars outside the viewport, millions of them glowing softly, and whispered, almost to himself, "And maybe in their fear, they will finally learn peace." The ship's engines came to life, silent as ever, bending space around its frame. With one bright shimmer, the Eidolon vanished again, leaving only a faint echo behind, a sound that felt like both a warning and a promise. Across the galaxy, every listening post received the final pulse of that night. It was not a word, but it carried meaning. When translated by every known language, it became the same single message: "We are still here." After the last signal, those 4 simple words, "We are still here," the galaxy fell into a silence deeper than any in recorded history. The transmission had ended, but its echo lingered everywhere. You could feel it in the stillness of trading ports, in the way fleet commanders hesitated to issue new orders, even in the quiet fear that drifted through civilian streets. No one dared to move first. Humanity's shadow now stretched across the stars, and every empire knew it. In the great chamber of the Galactic Council, the air was thick with unease. Delegates from 100 species gathered again beneath the high dome, but this time no one argued. The holographic image of the human warship floated in the center, half lit, half lost in shadow. High Chancellor Vrax, who had once screamed for war, now spoke softly. "They could have destroyed us," he said. "All of us. But they did not." The Vori diplomat nodded slowly, her silver skin reflecting the dim light. "They remembered mercy," she whispered. For the first time in generations, the Council voted without division. A galactic decree was passed. No vessel from any empire would fire upon a human signal again. The vote was unanimous. Far away on the colony of Serenus, the scientist Lura watched from her observatory as the night sky shimmered faintly. The Eidolon was gone, but its presence was still felt. Every few days, faint pulses crossed her instruments, too quiet to be messages, too regular to be noise. They were reminders. Humanity's way of saying, "We are watching." But something began to change. Across the galaxy, conflicts that had raged for centuries started to stop. Pirates abandoned raids. Empires paused invasions. Even the Andraxian Dominion, the same species that had once tried to destroy Earth, withdrew its fleets from neighboring systems. Not from fear, but from reflection. Stories began to spread, stories that no government could explain. In the dying mines of Orphea, workers found their machinery restored overnight, rebuilt with technology they did not possess. On the medical world of Tavra, patients in collapsed hospitals awoke to find new life support units that bore the old Earth insignia. In deep space, freighters lost to gravity storms reappeared days later, guided by invisible beacons marked only with one phrase: "For those who still look up." At first, everyone thought it was rumor. But the pattern was undeniable. Wherever hope had died, it returned, carried by unseen hands. On the frozen moon of Kellen, the monk Taro felt it most of all. He stood outside his temple, snow swirling around him, and saw lights moving across the sky, lines of pure white drifting silently over the horizon. He fell to his knees. "You never left," he whispered. "You only waited for us to remember who we are." Meanwhile, deep in the void between galaxies, the Eidolon drifted in silence. Inside its dim bridge, the human commander stood before a vast projection of the Milky Way. Around him were dozens of other humans, men and women who had survived the age of collapse, who had built hidden colonies, who had raised generations beneath artificial suns. They were the descendants of those who had refused extinction. "Their fear is fading," said the second officer quietly. The commander nodded. "Fear was never what we wanted. They needed to see that the old fire still burns, that we still endure." Another officer turned, his face illuminated by pale blue light. "And now? Do we reveal the colonies?" The commander looked at the map, the hundreds of red points glowing faintly across the spiral arms. "No," he said. "Not yet. Let them heal themselves first. Let them choose peace without the threat of our power." He paused, his voice lower now, almost gentle. "When they are ready to meet us as equals, not as ghosts, we will return." The bridge grew quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the ship's systems, like a distant heartbeat. Back in the heart of known space, change continued to unfold. The Andraxian Dominion dismantled half its weapon foundries and began funding rebuilding efforts on old human ruins. The Vori established a new research initiative to recover lost Earth languages and philosophies. Even the most ruthless species, the Zark Coalition, opened negotiations for peace with their enemies, citing the unseen eyes of humanity as their reason. Children across the colonies began learning human history again. Old songs were broadcast on public channels, melodies recovered from the Eidolon's pulse transmission. Some of the music made people cry without knowing why. On one quiet planet, an old recording was found buried beneath the ruins of a pre-collapsed satellite. It was human, dated over 500 years ago. A voice spoke with calm pride. "If we fall, remember this. We built bridges where others built walls. We dreamed when others feared. We will not vanish. We will wait for the stars to come home." When this message was played across the Galactic Council, even the hardest leaders stayed silent for a long time. And then slowly, without vote or debate, the Council renamed the central sector of the galaxy, the region once known for endless war. It would now be called the Human Span. From that day forward, no empire dared to claim it. The stars of the human span were left untouched, a living monument of respect. Centuries of arrogance began to crack. Species that had once ruled through dominance started to listen again, to learn, to rebuild. The galaxy itself began to breathe differently, and somewhere, far beyond the reach of all telescopes, the Eidolon turned its course toward the dark. The old commander watched as the stars ahead glimmered softly in the void. He spoke to his crew quietly. "They have remembered. That is enough." One of the younger officers looked at him curiously. "Do you think they will ever be ready to see us again?" The commander smiled faintly. "When they can look into the dark and not feel fear, only wonder, then yes, that will be the day we return." The Eidolon's engines came to life, spreading ripples of blue light across the void. For a moment, the stars reflected off its hull like 1,000 eyes watching the galaxy they once called home. And then, with a silent flash, the last warship of humanity vanished into the shadows, leaving behind not a threat, not a weapon, but a memory. Across the spiral arms, the pulse returned once more, soft, calm, eternal. We are still here, but this time the galaxy did not tremble. It bowed its head in respect.